Welcome to my channel, guys. Today what I'm talking about is the developing relationship between MLS and the Canadian Premier League. So what I'm first going to talk about is the kind of backwards pathway that has been created between the Canadian Premier League and MLS. So of course the Canadian Premier League only started in April, late April of course, and they've only experienced one transfer window. The second one's coming up. So players haven't been moving away from the Canadian Premier League yet. They've only signed players. As a result, many players who used to play for MLS teams who have been released, Canadian Premier League teams ended up signing them. And particularly Canadian players and also particularly younger Canadian players. Even some USL talent who's international and some former international MLS talent like Luis Pereira, who only played 2 games for FC Dallas and is currently playing with HFX Wanderers. There's also some players coming from loan from MLS, including 3 players. So Emery Welshman from FC Cincinnati, he's played for Forge FC and he's looked like quite a good player for Forge FC. And then there's Blake Smith, who's came from FC Cincinnati and who's played for Pacific FC. Then there's Ryan Telfer, who's came from Toronto FC, played for York 9, and interestingly enough, as a Toronto FC fan, I'm watching them, and he actually came for a game and played for Toronto FC midway through his loan and ended up setting up a goal for Toronto FC, which is quite good. It's nice to see him developing. But this backwards pathway is a good way for Canadian Premier League teams to sign players from MLS, but it's also a good way for them to take these players, try and develop them, and show their talent that may have not been shown in MLS, give them a second shot so that hopefully they'll get, they have a second shot at professional soccer, but hopefully they'll be able to make it back to MLS, or they'll be able to maybe sign with a European team or a South American team or a league of a bit bigger stature than the Canadian Premier League. One of the things you have to note though about this relationship with MLS, the Canadian Premier League and MLS and the players, is that these players, particularly younger players who come from MLS and are released, they'll probably be more inclined to sign with USL teams. The reason being, more specifically American players than Canadian players. Canadian players are signing with CanPL teams like David Chouanier. I hope that I got that name right. He signed for Montreal Impact instead of signing a 1-year contract extension with Montreal Impact because of course he wants playing time. And that was an interesting choice made by him. But many American players will still sign with USL teams because they get to stay in the US, but also USL has proven in the past that MLS teams actually scout these teams and pick some of their best players of the bench every once in a while, and maybe they'll get a better shot at making it back to MLS if they go there. But I believe that the opinion will start to change over the coming years as the CanPL develops, and I think it can become better than USL. I believe it's right around the region of the quality of USL at the moment. Maybe some teams are a little bit below, some teams are a bit better. And now I'm going to talk about the CanPL to MLS pathway, probably the pathway that most players want to take because you'll be able to make higher wages and it's a league of higher stature, more people watch it. So this will be something that will develop more over the years, more so with between Canadian Premier League teams and Canadian MLS teams. The reason being is that sometimes Canadian players can count as international players on US MLS teams' rosters, which is very unfortunate, but it is the reality. There are certain rules that can make it so that they don't count as internationals, but sometimes they can count as internationals, and as a result many Canadians struggle to get a place on American MLS teams. So this will be more of a relationship between Canadian MLS teams unless they can get that rule changed over the coming years. But the CanPL has been able to address this untapped pool of talent, of this semi-professional player pool that is in Canada that has never gotten a chance to be signed by professional teams. There's teams like Sigma FC, which Coach Bobby Smirniotis, who's now the Forge FC team, co-founded, and he coached them for a decade or so around that period of time. And they produced players like Kyle Larin. They helped to produce players like that. I believe he did play for them. But there is an untapped pool of talent where players like Cadell Thomas, who's playing for Forge FC, and Anthony Novak, who also played for a semi-professional team. You know, they're quality players, but they haven't been signed by any MLS teams, and now they're getting a chance to play for Forge FC of the Canadian Premier League. And this is one of the biggest player pools for the Canadian Premier League because these players aren't getting a chance at professional soccer. They've never gotten a chance, many of them, at professional soccer, but they have the talent to make it to MLS, to European leagues, I believe, in my personal opinion. But there's a lot of untapped talent in Canada. I think that's a big theme of this video that MLS teams haven't found, and the Canadian Premier League will help to aid that so that they can sell those players later on. You know, there's players like Tristan Borges, who's currently tied for the Golden Boot. He's an attacking midfielder, and he played, he's playing for Forge FC at the moment, which is Hamilton's team, and Joseph Di Chiara, who's playing for York 9 FC, which is in the outskirts of Toronto. Like, these players are some quality players that could potentially make it to MLS, or they could make it to South America or to Europe in the future. And I think that's the goal for them. And then also, as I was saying previously, the CanPL can act as a bit of a slingshot for these players to come to the Canadian Premier League who may have not done the greatest in the MLS system, like Matthew Baldissimo and Caden Chung, who play for Pacific FC, which is Vancouver Island's team. And, you know, they can play for Pacific FC, develop their talent, and hopefully another team of bigger stature will come, scout them out, see that they're quality players, and sign them if they're proven themselves that they are quality players, of course. And then now on to college players. This is interesting too, because this is also kind of untapped talent as well. You know, for very long, players from university or college couldn't really make it to these professional leagues because they weren't really getting looked at by MLS teams. I'm talking specifically Canadian universities and colleges. So now these players are getting looked at by CanPL teams, players like Connor James, who's the goalkeeper, starting goalkeeper for FC Edmonton, who I believe can make it to becoming one of the goalkeepers for Canada in the future. I think he could be scouted by an MLS team or by other teams of bigger statures, and he can be signed by them because, you know, I would argue that he's better than a lot of the MLS goalkeepers based on some of the highlights that I've seen of him and some of the games that I've watched. I remember this one where he saved a ton of shots for FC Edmonton. So I think that's something that we need to look at because these college players haven't been signed for many years, and now they're finally getting signed in the draft, in the U Sports CanPL draft, which was hosted 2018, late 2018. Now they're finally getting looked at by professional teams. And although it's CanPL teams that don't have as high of a stature as MLS teams, you know, these MLS teams can hopefully, they'll scout the CanPL, they'll scout CanPL teams, and they'll sign them up, the players who are proven themselves in the league, affiliates. So I'd suspect that many of these Canadian Premier League teams would not want to be affiliated with MLS teams because they want to appear as separate from MLS as possible, because they don't want like York 9 FC affiliating with Toronto FC when they're supposed to be local rivals. That wouldn't really do very good to the rivalry. Thank you for watching this video. Please like and subscribe. Also, if you want to check out my comparison between the CanPL and MLS, I'll leave that down in the description. That's about it for what I've got for this video. See ya.